After an ordinary day, a young boy named Mako woke up in a different dimension. Suddenly, a ball of light appeared and turns into a man and introduces himself as Tsukuyomi, the ruler of the moon. He explains that he has come to turn Mako into a hero and hand him over to the goddess of another world. He further explains that Mako's parents are actually from another world. Due to some circumstances, his parents signed a contract with the goddess and came to Japan. As an exchange, they agreed to someday give back to the goddess whatever was most important to them. It means if Mako doesn't go, one of his sisters Yukiko or Mary will be taken. So Mako then agreed. After Mako finished the letter for his family, Tsukuyomi granted him all the power he could. Suddenly, his body started disappearing with the goddess taking him. He then reminded Mako that the goddess he's about to meet has tons of problems, so he must try to be patient with her. After it, the goddess greeted him and informed him that the demons and spirits in her world are creating chaos. That's why he was summoned to help. However, she noticed his face and laughed at it. She then informs him that she'll be using the cooling off rule so he can just get out of her sight. Mako then reminded her that she summoned him, but she informs him that she has already found other heroes suitable for her world, and Mako can stay put at the edge of her world instead. She then gave him the ability to understand, speak, read, and write languages other than the human language, so he can enjoy a meager life with lowly monsters and not with her humans. The goddess then threw him away, so Tsukuyomi showed up. He informed Mako that he would be fine falling because the world he used to live in was different, so his magic powers and physical body were under considerable strain. However, since he no longer lived there, he should be quite powerful in this world, but he can still die. Tsukuyomi's body started distorting, so he informed Mako that their communication consumed a great deal of his strength, so he must now sleep for several centuries. Before disappearing, Tsukuyomi granted Mako freedom in his new world. After that, Mako started his journey. However, he's been walking for 3 days without anything. At night, he suddenly heard someone asking for help. He immediately came to her aid and realized that it was a two-headed dog against a pig. He attacked the dog, but he was so powerful that the pig got scared of him. Mako was able to talk to the pig, ask where he could find people, but she explained that there's no human village nearby, because their place is at the edge of the world known as the wasteland. She then introduces herself as Emma, a Highland orc. Mako then asked about her village, but she informed him that she was on her way to the Divine Mountain to offer herself as a sacrifice to the Shin. Since her village has been enveloped in fog for the past several years, their crops have stopped producing, and by offering sacrifices the fog can subside. Mako then feels the urge to help her. Afterwards, Emma took him to her place and fed him. He then noticed the bowls floating, so she explained that it's just transportation magic. He had asked her to teach him how to use magic. Later, she showed him how to summon flame by using the spell Brid. Mako tried it and successfully copied it. Emma then asked him to try shooting it, which he easily did, so she asked what his level was. After that, Emma speculated he could be level 300 and handed him the scroll to measure it. However, he was only level 1. The next day, Emma checked on Mako, but he suddenly disappeared and only left a letter thanking her for giving him the list of spells, and that he left to deal with the Shin. At the mountain, Mako uses the spell to create a bow and practice shooting it onto a shrine. However, there were actually demons in there, and they revealed that they were only using Shin's name to subjugate the orcs. However, Mako destroyed Shin's home, so Shin's wrath will become real now. Suddenly, a red mist enveloped him. The dragon Shin showed up and immediately attacked him. He was able to dodge all of its attacks and see through the dragon, which might be because of the power Tsukuyomi granted him. He then tried attacking it using flame, but the dragon was confident that she was invincible. However, she still got hit by Mako. So Shin trapped Mako inside the memory illusion to drown him in happiness. Inside, his former clubmate Nukimi asked him to go out with her. Meanwhile, Shin watches his memories and finds something interesting. Back inside, Nukimi continues confessing to him, but he knows that it's not real because the truth is that he actually made her cry. Mako then understood the power Tsukuyomi gave him, that he can manipulate his surroundings. He could also search around without being noticed as well as strengthen things, so he managed to break through. However, Shin suddenly became friendly and asked to make a contract where they could share each other's strength and Shin would become his companion, because she became interested in Mako's memories. Mako then agreed, so Shin started the ritual at 50 by 50. However, Mako was too powerful, so Shin tried the 80 by 20 only to balance it, and now she's practically Mako's slave and she suddenly turned into a human. Shin is an invincible dragon who can manipulate space, read people's memories, and specialize in illusions. However, after forming a contract with Mako, her form suddenly turns into a human, which worries Mako since he's planning on riding on a dragon's back for travel. She then explains that in an 80/20 contract like theirs, the weaker creature takes on the appearance of the dominant one. But he pointed out that she doesn't act like a weak one, so she explained that it's important that a samurai doesn't show weakness. Mako then found out that the memory she was interested in was the historical dramas. Shin then invited him to enter the mist where her demiplane is located. After entering, she had no idea where they are, because her demiplane is supposed to be a dark, empty space. On their way, Mako noticed a persimmon tree and gave one to Shin. He then noticed that the plants around him were familiar, so he used his power and searched the whole place. He realized that it's huge but ends at the border of the mist. He then wondered that if the demiplane can only be reached through Shin's mist, then the goddess can't mess with him there. So he started thinking about building a town inside. He then asked her about her involvement with the orcs, and asked her to come to the orcs' village to clear up the misunderstanding. After getting out, Emma showed up to stop him from fighting Shin, but Shin clarified that she is Shin and Mako had already attacked her. Emma didn't believe it because Shin is an invincible dragon. So Shin explains that she was captivated by Mako and formed a contract with him. She also showed Emma her scales that came off during the fight to prove her identity. At Orcs' village, everyone celebrated. Emma thanked Mako for saving her and her village. Meanwhile, Shin revealed to the Orcs' chief, who's Emma's father, that Mako was the one who saved Emma. The chief then plans on repaying him, so she suggested to him that they live on Fertile Island. The next day, Mako thought that the Orcs had packed their stuff to see them off, but the chief clarified that they accepted Shin's offer to live in her sanctuary. Shin explained that it's her demiplane that is transformed into fertile land after their contract, because she heard him talking about building a town there. But he still didn't agree because he thought there could be demons. Suddenly, a child showed up and assured him that she'd fight the demons herself. Mako thought it was Shin's child, but she clarified that it was just a fragment of herself. He then asked the orcs about their decision, but they're determined to go. He then asked Shin where the orcs will live, so she absorbed the entire village using her mist, including the orcs, to transfer them into her demiplane. Inside the demiplane, the orcs started their new lives. Mako practices his magic and finds out that he has the strongest affinity for water. Meanwhile, Shin continues watching the historical dramas from his memory and asks for more, but he stopped him and commanded her to stop watching, but she refuses. Shin then informed him that she had actually recorded his memories to watch again, but she still preferred to watch them directly from him. Mako then asked why, and she explained that it's the difference between CG cutscenes and simple flashbacks. He then allowed her to make her stop talking. However, Shin thinks it's inconvenient that he can't move while she watches, so she plans on building a TV. After she left, he noticed the memories she recorded, including his family photo. He then started thinking about his parents coming from this world. So he finally decided that his goal would be to follow his parents' path by first heading toward a human village. Meanwhile, a dwarf was running from a giant creature. Back at the demiplane, Mako noticed orcs talking about cutting the giant tree to build Mako a house. He then took out his short sword and used his power, which he now calls Kai. After easily cutting through it, he noticed the orcs' bandages and offered to heal them. Afterwards, he accidentally cut himself, but his power wasn't able to heal him. Suddenly, Shin showed up with the dwarf. She then informed Mako that the demiplane was under attack. Suddenly, the creature showed up. Mako asked for Shin's help, but she refused and explained that she'll defend the others. He then asked what the creature was, and the dwarf answered that it was called the Black Spider of Disaster, an ancient creature plagued by hunger. Shin also revealed that she used to fight with it, but its hunger made it mad, and it only retreated when she wounded it. Mako then started fighting it and accumulated his Brit in midair while he sliced its legs. However, it keeps regenerating, so he uses the flame bow and the Brit to shoot it with a fire spear, but it seems to be happy getting hit. Mako continues fighting the spider. However, he was stabbed and it drank his blood. It made him angry, so he continuously shot it with flames. After dealing great damage, he suddenly passed out, but the spider regenerated again and took him. However, the spider didn't hurt him, and says that it wants to stay with him. Shin then took Mako and informed the spider that they fought before, but her form changed because of her contract with Mako, and if the spider plans to stay with him, it must also change its form by entering into a contract. The spider then started the contract and turned into the human form of a girl. Later, Mako finally woke up and his wound had disappeared. Suddenly, the girl thanked him for the meal and offered herself to become his servant. Earlier, the others found out that Mako has no aptitude for healing magic, so Emma assisted Shin in healing him. Mako then asked who she was, and she explained that she is the spider that transforms into a human after their contract. Later, Shin introduces the dwarf and explains that he's an elder dwarf known for producing noble artifacts. He then introduces himself as Biren. He thanked Mako for driving away the black spider and saving his village. He also asked for Mako's permission to let them move in the demiplane, which he immediately agreed to. But Shin made a condition that they should help provide weapons and recognize Mako as their lord. Biren agreed with it, and Tomo gifted him dragon scales to convince his people, in order to trace his parents' path. Mako spent hours outside the demiplane searching for human settlements. Suddenly, he noticed a settlement, but Shin showed up to ask for a request. Shin and the girl asked him to give them names. He then tried giving the girl a name, but she asked him to give her a beautiful name. Shin got angry because she wanted to get named first. Mako thinks about it and gives her the name Tomo, which is the name of a valiant female samurai. She immediately accepted it and started glowing, since receiving a name has increased her strength. The girl then asked for a return, so Mako thought that since she was starting over, he'd give her the name Mio, which is a combination of the Japanese character for zero and his preferred element of water. Later, they gathered everyone and the girls announced their new names. They also made the crowds vote on what to call Mako, and the young master title one. He didn't agree with it at first, but after seeing the crowds, he accepted it. Mio then informs him that new species have joined them. The leader of the dwarves introduces himself to him as Eld and points out to Mako that he barely looks like a human. So he wondered if he had received a mission from the goddess. Mako immediately denied being acquainted with the goddess. Tomo then introduces her followers, the mist lizards, a powerful species with both water and air attributes. Mio also introduces her followers, the Alk. They also cannot escape hunger, but after receiving Mako's essence, which is his blood and mana, they have regained their senses. And they also do it by hurting themselves because they can easily regenerate. After that, Mako instructed Mio and Tomo to inform each species that they were free to choose wherever they wanted to live. He then went into the human settlement and saw a human. However, she called him a monster and ran away. But he still headed to the town, and the humans prepared a battle with him. He tried communicating with them, but he couldn't. So he got attacked while being called a monster, and he remembers that it was because of the power that the goddess gave him. Back at home, Emma checks on him after what happened. So he commended Emma for being able to talk with humans, but she explains that it's because of the common language. Emma also explains that it's not because of the language that he was attacked, but because of his appearance. Tomo then pointed out that it's actually because of the mana radiating from his body that he might have appeared like several demon kings to the humans. Emma then suggested he try suppressing his mana, but he only suppressed a little. But he didn't agree on giving up on humans and plans to learn the common and acquire equipment to suppress his mana. A few weeks later, he finally learned to read and write. A dwarf craftsman named Rugui also provided him with a ring that absorbs mana and can kill whoever wears it, but he broke it. While studying, he learned that he could generate human words using his hand. Suddenly, Rugui showed up and gave him the new ring called Dropmere. Not only does it absorb mana, but it also compresses it. And once it turns red, it's reached its limit and he must remove it. The group then ventured to the town while a mysterious girl observed them. Inside, Mako realized that all humans were good-looking. The group then noticed the Adventurers Guild and went there. The receptionist immediately welcomed them to the Zetsuya and doubted Mako if he would like to register because he dressed suspiciously. The girls then explained that he's the heir to a trading company and got cursed, which is why he's forced to dress like that. The receptionist then explains to him how the guild works and that he should be a rank E first. But since he's an heir to a trading company, she assumed he was registered with the Merchants Guild. But Mako explains that he lost his registration card. She clarified that he could only get one reissued in the distant town of Saige. He then checks out the board and finds out that the highest-ranking adventurer in Zetsuya is Mills. Meanwhile, the receptionist made Mio and Tomo measure their level, but they have to use a larger scroll to measure it, where Tomo's level is 1,320, while Mio is 1,500, which is higher than Tomo. Because of it, they were immediately registered with the guild. Tomo then asked who the next highest-level adventurer was. The receptionist answered that it's level 920, Sophia the Dragon Slayer, who slew the Dragon Lancer. Meanwhile, the assistant also asked Mako to measure his level, but it remains at 1, while the two males observed them. Afterwards, they went into an inn, but he overcharged them, so Tomo showed in her card and threatened that she'd tear the place up. So the innkeeper immediately lowered the charge. Inside the room, Tomo pointed out that the prices in the town are unusually high, so something fishy is going on. He then decided to look for food and commanded Tomo to guard their stuff, since someone had been following them since they left the guild. At night, Tomo guarded their wagon, and the thieves started showing up. Meanwhile, Mako and Mio had just finished their dinner when a little girl approached them. Mako asked Mio to handle the little girl. However, she scared her, so Mako scolded her. He then apologizes, and the girl immediately tells him that she has a request. So Mako decided to take her back to the inn, while a man observes them. At the inn, the little girl introduces herself as Rinan. She explained that her sister left for work but never came back, so she ended up getting kicked out of the home they rented. Meanwhile, Tomo faces the thieves and ends up killing them. She then noticed a thief escaping, so she made it sleep and took it to Mako, who lectured her for killing the thieves and revealed to her that the thief she took was a woman. Ronan then interfered, so Tomo thanked her for saving her from getting lectured. Ronan then thanked Mako and also pointed out that he could actually talk, but she didn't understand his words afterward. Mako then informs her that they have spare food and beds that she can use, but all of them are actually Tomo's. Ronan then gave him a sketch of her sister's face, which made Mako feel something. After Mio ate the thieves' bodies, she went back to the room and saw Mako seriously checking the thieves' memories. They found out that the thieves were at the guild and somehow connected to Ronin, because they held Ronin's sister captive. He then asked Mio and Tomo to immediately check on Ronin's sister, because if he went himself, he might not be able to remain calm, since Ronin's sister looks exactly like Mukumi. On their way, Tomo and Mio talked about Mako's sudden change in mood when he saw the sketch. So Mio wondered if that woman was an acquaintance of his. But Tomo clarified that it's impossible because he doesn't have a single acquaintance in this world, and unless they save the woman, Mako will be stuck in his current mood. Meanwhile, Mako and Rinon set off to go to the trading exchange where they could sell their cargo. She then questions him about why he can't drive a wagon when he's a merchant's son, so he commended her for it, and her sister must be proud of her. She then remembered her memory of her sister, who couldn't pay off her debt for adventuring, and asked Rinon to escape to Sage alone. Meanwhile, Rinon's sister was imprisoned. Her family were actually adventurers, but one of her relatives was once defeated in battle against a powerful monster and lost their family's short sword. In order to restore her family's honor, she ventured into the wasteland. Suddenly, the girls finally arrived and Mio immediately healed her and tried to leave. However, the strongest adventurer, Mills, stopped them. Meanwhile, Mako successfully sells the fruits he harvested from the demoplane for 500 gold. So Ronin became suspicious of him. Suddenly, Ronin noticed someone, so she informed Mako that she'd go back home. But he knows that she's going to meet her lookout. Ronin then reported to the man named Derek that Mako was able to sell this strange fruit for 500 golds, which he said came from a village within the mist. Derek didn't believe her and asked her to steal the gold instead. Ronin refused to steal, but he assured her that her sister and she would be free from debt. Meanwhile, Tomo asked Mills why he didn't save the girl if he was an adventurer, but the girl clarified that he's actually the leader of the criminal group. Suddenly, Derek arrived and informed Mills that he had already commanded Ronin. Tomo then called Mills a coward, so Derek reprimanded her for faking her level, and if they do that, they will be tasked in defeating the demi-human with the horrifying mana that recently appeared in their town. He then asked them to join his group instead of following the masked kid, whom he calls a level 1 idiot. His insults made the girl enraged and punched him. However, he dodges it using a shield called Clay Aegis, which is a powerful physical barrier. Back at the inn, Ronin was contemplating whether she'd steal from Mako. Suddenly, the innkeeper asked her to leave, so Mako explained that she was his friend. After hearing it, she apologized to him. Meanwhile, the two girls became serious and started attacking Mills and his group. Tomo's attack was so strong that it broke the walls where others were imprisoned. Mio then took her turn and slapped Mills, while Tomo tortured Derek for making Ronin do something bad. The girls then further tore down the whole place. However, Mills tried to hostage the girl, but he ended up getting punched away. The two girls then started discussing if they overdid it and ended up fighting over who had the most kills. The girl tried stopping them, but they only showed off their powers to know who did more damage. The whole town was destroyed, but Rinon finally reunited with her sister Toa. Later, Toa immediately thanked them, and Mako noticed that she really resembled Nukumi. While the sisters sleep, Mako asks Mio to produce spiders, silk to tie them into a bow, and shoot them outside, after what they did to the town. Before Mako's group left Tetsuya, one of the captives named Hazel explained to the guild's receptionist that the town had been destroyed by a monster, but Tomo actually uses her power to alter Hazel and others' memories aside from the sisters. Mako then informed her about their registration, but she answered that Tetsuya must have been destroyed before its information could be shared, so they'll have to re-register in Sage. Mako then handles the cause of the problem, which is the girls' fight over their level. So he tells Tomo to do knight errantry, where one wanders alone to hone their skill, which samurai also do. Tomo took the bait and set off to do it. Meanwhile, Mio thought she would get some alone time with Mako, but the others also came with them. On their way, Mako informs Mio about the monsters ahead, so she immediately takes care of them and gets praise from others. Toa then asked about gathering the monsters' materials. Mako refused at first, but after seeing her plot, he immediately agreed and got a bad look from the girls. However, he got chills seeing how Toa gathered materials. The group then continued their journey to Sage City while also accumulating materials. So Toa wondered if Mako considered offering transport services at the Kuzuno Trading Company, which he called for his company. Suddenly, they faced a rare monster called Ruby Eyes. He let the others handle it, but they refused because it's strong, so he asked Mio, but the others demanded that she deal less damage to it. So Mio refused and asked Mako instead. He then asked about its weak spot, which is the abdomen. However, the others don't believe in him because he's only level 1. But he amazes them when he successfully shoots all of it into the abdomen. After gathering the materials, the group headed inside the town. Mako re-registered again while still being level 1, while he made Mio wait to re-register once Tomo came back. He then checked out the quest and noticed a special quest from the Rembrandt Trading Company, a requisition for eyes from Ruby Eyes. Later, they split up the materials. So Toa asked if it was alright for him to only get one of each material and 12 eyes from the ruby eyes, but he assured her and apologized for taking the rare. Toa then said that this would be the end of their journey together, so he proposed to celebrate by having a meal together. Toa then volunteered to look for a restaurant and have Mako's contact use their guild cards, which is a high-tech device that includes town maps and a monster encyclopedia. At night, the group went to a butcher restaurant. Mako was overjoyed to be able to eat mango-looking meat, so the elven girl Luisa, who was a blessed gunner, pointed out that she didn't sense any desire from him. Suddenly, Hazel asked him if he used the ruby eyes for his weapons, since he's an alchemy meister and he can help him, but Mako clarified that he'll use it for the job request of the guild. The priest knight Ranina was also already drunk and asked him to arm wrestle to test his strength. However, she ended up losing to him. Meanwhile, Toa's job status is a dark thief. She then asked him whether the job he was talking about was for Rembrandt, and informed him about the rumors. After dinner, Mako asked Mio to head back first while he brought in the materials because thieves might show up, and also because Toa informed him that bad things happen to people who accept jobs for Rembrandt. However, Mio only thought about being alone with him. Inside, she thought they were going to do something, but he slept instead. The next day, Mako learned to create mist gates and went back to the demoplane. They were immediately greeted by Emma and Tomo's fragment. Emma immediately pointed out his way of speaking and reminded him to speak with manners like a master does. She then reported to him the current situation of each species, where the Alp resided on the mountain, the lizards dealt with farming, and the dwarves helped in construction while they created equipment for Mako. She also informed him that the orcs planned to build him a huge house and use it for their meetings, and that they'll be able to construct it using his memory as a reference. Mako then asked if they were in contact with Tomo, but they answered no. Suddenly, Eld approached him, who now no longer uses a cane because of his walking equipment. He then asked Mako to come and choose from their armors, but he refuses them and explains that because he's a merchant, he would prefer a coat instead. He then noticed the trench coat. Eld then explained that it's protective gear made by Rugui. Rugui explains that the gear absorbs a specified amount of mana like the clothing version of Dropnir, which can kill the wearer, but it did nothing to Mako. Rugui further explains that it offers both physical and high magical defense. He then informed him that he could change its outer appearance from the inside, and red indicates it prioritizes mobility over defense. Mako tested it, but it already had its fill of mana, so he asked Rugui to make it last longer. Afterwards, Mio introduced the alks that she taught to transform. They showed Mako what they had gathered, and he informed them that it was poison fire coral, and a single bite of these can kill a person, but Mio thought it tasted good. Back at town, Mako chose to meet the Rembrandt client alone to deliver the required materials. At Rembrandt, the man introduces himself as Patrick, the representative of the Rembrandt company. He then asked about Mako's information. Mako informed him about his level and the request being his first job. He also informed him that he plans on establishing a business and getting registered with the Merchants Guild. Patrick thought Mako was trying to get connected with their company and reprimanded him, and that an adventurer like him could never acquire the ruby eye, so Mako showed it to him. Patrick then apologized and explained that they need the eyes to produce a special medicine called ambrosia, because his wife and daughter suffer from a level 8 curse caused by a witch doctor. Mako then asked to be present when the medicine was made because his alchemy meister friend could help them. Patrick then thanked him because he'll now be able to take one step since it takes 2 eyes to create medicine for one person. But Mako gave him more. After it, he gave Mako the receipt and cheered him on to pass the Merchant Guild's test. At the guild, the receptionist informed him that he'd need to pass 2 tests, the written test and the practical test where he needs to obtain supplies. And if he passes the test, he'll need to show his economic strength. He then asked to buy a manual, even though it cost too much money. However, he recognized what the test would be and asked to take it immediately. After reviewing the manual, the examiner made him start the exam, but all of the questions were just for grade schoolers, and Mako immediately finished them with perfect scores. The examiner then made him draw a ball to know the level and materials he needed to obtain. One of them is the Howl Fang, which is a difficult material. The examiner reminded him that he need to submit it within 3 days or something of the same value. So Mako brings out his materials, and the examiner then announced that he had passed the exam. Meanwhile, Tomo just finished her nightly errantry and brought the crab she killed to Demoplane and feast on it. Suddenly, an orc informed her that Mio had entered Mako's memory vault and might eat them. But Mio was actually just translating Mako's memories, and Emma only asked the orc to say those so Tomo would come and help them with translating. In exchange, she won't tell Mako she already came back and feasted on a crab. After that, Tomo decided to watch instead, so Mio reprimanded her. Tomo then asked what happened between her and Mako, but Mio clarified that she didn't sleep with him, so Tomo won't get her turn to attend next to him. Meanwhile, Mako went to a restaurant and still ordered even though he didn't know what it tasted like. His order then arrived. He didn't like that it was bananas and now misses the Demiplane's food. At Demiplane, Fragment and others had just finished harvesting when she tried sneaking food and Mako caught her, but he assured her that he also came to sneak food. She then informed him that they harvested less because of the changing weather, so he must figure out the cause immediately. He then asked if they had started planning the illusory city. She answered that they had but weren't sure how Mako intended it to be. So he explains that he plans to make an adventurer wander in the illusory city and send them back with a few things, so when he starts trading, his stuff won't be unusual to other towns. Suddenly, Tomo spoke to him and informed him about Mio. He immediately went to the vault and saw the fighting, so he questioned Haruna. She explained that Mio was translating his memory and Tomo secretly came back. But Mio accidentally saw a memory Tomo brought, and they ended up fighting. Mako then stopped them and asked them to explain themselves, especially Tomo, who didn't contact him. Mio then showed the memory and he recognized that it's an anime show, but Mio thinks it's delicious, so he allowed her to watch them. Back at the end, the group talked about Rembrandt's good reputation, especially Patrick. Mako then talked about the bed, so the girls asked him to choose wherever he wanted, but he decided to sleep on the sofa. Suddenly, he received a message from Hazel agreeing to help with the medicine. The next day, he met with Hazel. Inside a mansion, Hazel and Mako were called by Patrick to start preparing the medicine. After gathering the ingredients, Hazel did an incantation and repeatedly called for the goddess blessing, so Mako helped him immediately complete it. Hazel then noticed that the process uses a substitute, so the butler Morris explained they use ruby eye as a substitute for ambrosia flowers, since they primarily feed on its nectar and are also hard to acquire. Mako then sees finding an ambrosia flower as an opportunity to boom his business. Afterwards, Hazel completed 1 dose of ambrosia, so Morris immediately took it to Patrick. After completing more, Morris suddenly came back and it startled Hazel, causing him to accidentally throw the vials into the air, so Mako uses his power to save them. Morris then took them to Patrick, who was injured after trying to make his wife take the medicine. Hazel explains that it might be because of the curse that is trying to hinder his wife from taking the medicine. Patrick then tells them about the state of his wife, who has shut herself in and whose image has changed. Mako then asks him to take him to his wife, and he'll restrain her so Patrick can administer the medicine. However, Patrick doubted him because of his level, but Hazel and Morris assured him that Mako had great abilities. Inside a room, Mako damped the spilled medicine and used it to lure out Patrick's wife Lisa. She immediately charges on him, so he uses judo to restrain her and makes Patrick successfully administer the medicine and turn her back. Mako then went to the daughter and did the same. Suddenly, Hazel showed up with the other dose but tripped again, so Morris helped him. Lastly, it went to the other daughter, who still had a little sense but still attacked Mako, so he immediately restrained her and made her drink the medicine. Afterwards, Patrick thanked Mako and asked who he really was, but he answered that he's just a merchant in training. Outside, Tomo and Mio waited for him. Suddenly, they were attacked, but he managed to dodge the spell. The girls were also unharmed and belittled the man's powers. The man then called out for the others and asked the girls to join them instead. So Mio asked how much, and he offered 10 gold, which she immediately accepted, while Tomo thought she was a traitor. But the truth was that Mako asked her not to join to avoid what happened to Zetsuya. The man then pointed out that they should not get involved with Patrick. So Mako commanded Tomo to leave them barely alive. After it, the man asked for Mio's help, but she refused based on their agreement. His associate then tried escaping, but Mako stopped him. The man then introduced himself as Lime, Side's #1 adventurer. He then attacked them but was immediately defeated by Tomo, who was about to finish him when she saw his memory and spared him. He then apologized for making the girls sleep, but Mako clarified that the curse can kill. So he explained that several months ago, the witch informed him about the dying adventurers, including those from the orphanage, because of Rembrandt's anger. So the witch asked for his help. Their plan was to make Patrick reconsider his actions, so he agreed because he thought the curse wouldn't kill him. Using telepathy, Mako asked Tomo about his memory, and she answered that he was telling the truth, so they let him go. But Mio stopped him and took all of his money as her payment. Later, Lime apologized to Patrick and he accepted it as respect for Mako and informed him that his adventuring activity would be limited, but Lime answered that he'd be retiring. Near the orphanage, Tomo showed up and informed Lime that she knew he wanted to protect the orphanage. She then gave him a katana in exchange for breaking his sword. She also pointed out that he might sell it after she leaves, so it's much better for him to serve her as her spy to gather information. She'd also promised to give him more money and protect those he wanted to protect, so Lime immediately accepted it. Meanwhile, Patrick and Morris talk about going against Mako's trading company, but Tomo heard them and thought that the witch might also be a victim of their ambition. At the Demiplane, the three were finally back, but Emma informed them about a minor problem concerning the three of them. Emma explained that their warriors become depressed after training with them. Mio suggested ceasing training with them, but Tomo pointed out that she used her head because they think they'd abandon them, so the two started fighting again. Mako then asked Tomo to check on the lizardmen while he checked on the orcs with Mio. Afterwards, he checks on the orcs and uses his listening power on them. He then found out that they're depressed because they can't land a hit on him, unlike the girls. On their way, Mio pointed out that the vegetables were delicious, so Mako explained that it's called tomatoes and can also be cooked. Tomo then arrived and informed him about the lizardmen's state being the same as the orcs. Mako then speculated that both species don't interact that much, so Emma explains that it's because they want to keep each other's tactics private. So Mako suggested that instead of hiding each other's tactics, they should improve them, so Tomo volunteered to lead. Later, the orcs and lizardmen gathered. Tomo announced that there would be a one-on-one battle between each species' representatives to assess their strength. So Aggers represented the orcs and Liddy represented the lizardmen. The fight started, and the two showed exceptional strength and managed to destroy the ground. But in the end, Aggers won. However, Mako shows expressionlessness as Tomo asked him to do. Tomo then called them a disappointment for being weak, because they are 10% less strong than what she expected. So she proposed that once every 7 days, everyone participate in an individual match, to assess their strengths for each match and rank them, including the dwarves and Alk. But the orc disagrees because their tactics will be revealed. So she commanded them to abandon their pride and reveal their tactics through friendly rivalry. Mako then said in a speech that they'll do more joint training sessions because he wants them to strengthen each other. After it, Tomo called the event the Demiplane ranking. Back at Sige, the girls re-register at the guild. But Mio is still higher with level 1,500, while Tomo only got level 1,340. The receptionist then informs Mako that there's a request for him from the guild, since they don't have enough adventurers after Lime retired and the others are getting treated. They want him to train an adventurer to become the successor to Lime. He then answered that he knows a party with over 100 levels. Later, he asked Tomo to train Toa's party, and she immediately agreed. After he left, she thought that Toa seemed to be someone dear to Mako from his world, so she must finish training her immediately so she won't trouble Mako's heart. Through Tomo's training, Toa's party became independent. During practice, the party unsuccessfully defeated the monkeys, so Tomo reprimanded them for their strategy. Hazel can use offensive attacks using water and earth, but he only heals the girls who recklessly charge in. She then teaches them her strategy. She asked Hazel to create a trap using his attributes, also putting in a paralyzing potion, while she commanded Lusa to go to a place with a good view. She then undoes the barrier and makes Lusa shoot the monkey while it's paralyzed. But the monkeys use each other as stepping stones, so Rana hits it while Toa uses her thief skill to conceal herself and attack from behind. Hazel then informs Tomo that he still didn't cast a big spell, but she reminds him that they are still living creatures, and simply covering their mouth and nose will finish them. Afterwards, their party successfully defeated the monkeys and also gathered rare materials. Tomo then informs them that they'll defeat a den of monkeys on their own, so they must push themselves hard and make the people acknowledge them as the aces of Sige. Before leaving, she asked them to make a strategy overnight and attack 100 monkeys dwelling in the next den tomorrow. Afterwards, the receptionist found out from Tomo that she left Toa's party at the Shadowtail, where it's surrounded with dangerous areas. Suddenly, the party arrived with the 2 Lord Tails as proof of defeating 2 dens in one day. With it, Toa's part was recognized among the guild. Later, Mako asked Mio to look for ambrosia flowers at Tinnarak Forest. Afterwards, he informs Patrick that he wants to rent a space inside his shop, so Patrick calls for Morris to contact the newly opened space, but there's actually none. Patrick then asked if the reason he couldn't build a shop was because he needed to conduct espionage and notify the kingdom. So Patrick offered him the chance to build his business in a neutral city that doesn't belong to any kingdom. At the Demiplane, the residents threw a party for Mako for establishing his shop outside. Suddenly, Fragment offered him drinks, so he patted her, which Tomo felt. Mio then tried taking her turn by feeding him, but he's already eating, so Tomo grabbed her to let the residents have Mako. Suddenly, the Alk named Akina, who had already perfected her human form, reported to Mako their visit to Tinnarak. They saw an ambrosia and provided the flower's coordinates. They'd also tried taking back one, but another species seems to be tending the forest. Liddy then took his turn and informed Mako that through joint training, he managed to learn new tactics and defeat Aggers, while also being trained by Tomo. Afterwards, he was asked by Biren about the outside, so he questioned Biren if they felt suffocated being in the Demiplane. But he explains that they consider the place a paradise and he was happy to make weapons for him. But he also wonders what kind of weapons they have outside, so Mako offered him to try running the shop in Sige. Since dwarves are known as good blacksmiths, people might hire him. The other orc whom he healed then took his turn and informed him that he was assigned to aid people in the illusory city. Meanwhile, the girls wonder if the residents are still hobbling Mako because Mio wants to report about ambrosia and the species guarding it. But Tomo reminded her to only report what she found. Suddenly, they felt Mako's presence disappear and come back, so they went to his location. Mako was training his bow when Mio worriedly approached him, so he thought they were under attack. But Tomo informed him that the way he practiced his bow made him die countless times. She then asked how he drew his bow, so he explained that he focused deeply, and this action caused his consciousness to waver and blend into his surroundings. Mio then informed him that people can only diffuse their consciousness when they die, so what he's doing looks like suicide. Tomo further explains that his mana is increasing rapidly due to the act of dying and being reborn. Now he's not just radiating with demon kings, his mana is on the level of the goddess. His mana also expanded the Demiplane, and this means bad news for them if the goddess finds out she'll exterminate him. So they plan on rushing the dwarves to make mana-absorbing gear, while Mako decides to use his Kai to conceal his mana while visiting outside. The next day, he felt tired after attending to the shop's needs and what happened yesterday. Suddenly, a woman offered her service to him, but Tomo and Mio immediately took him back to the inn. He tried to escape from them and reasoned that he had just met the woman, but they didn't believe him and asked who they were to him. But he's too embarrassed to say they're like family to him, so he answered that it's not their business. The girls were angered by it and tried pushing themselves toward him, so he immediately uses ice and escapes from them by using mist to Demiplane. Emma then found him and questioned his clothes, but she immediately understood what happened when she saw the spider web and mist, so she informed him that the dwarves had already finished his gear. At the workshop, Rugui showed him his upgraded rings when Mio came and asked to talk with him. Outside, she apologized for what happened last night, so he asked her not to do it again. He then asked her to go with him to negotiate with the species that tends the ambrosia. At Tinnarak Forest, they sent someone following them, so Mio took care of it to lose them. On their way, he noticed the slippery path, so he asked Mio to hold hands, which made Mio wish the moment would stay forever. But the two girls stopped them, and their interruption angered Mio. Suddenly, the adventurers catch up and plan to take the ambrosias. So the little girl called them thieves and attacked them with ice. Mako immediately ran, but the female adventurer ordered him to fight back, and he noticed that she was the woman from yesterday. Mako then countered the attack, so the other girls shot them with fire, but Mako managed to use protection, while Mio was still enraged. The group continues running when Tomo communicates with Mako. He asked for help, but she reprimanded him for leaving her and going on a date with Mio, so he promised he'd allow her obsession with katana. She then ordered him to put mist on the adventurers and lead them to the illusory city, while he makes Mio taste his blood and brings her back to her senses. He then asks Mio to fight, and she immediately drains the mana from the wand, and Mako uses light to blind them and sneakily break their weapons. Meanwhile, the adventurers successfully arrived at the illusory city. Back in the forest, Mako clarified that he came to negotiate for ambrosia and not steal, so the girls then introduce themselves as Eris and Aqua, and take them to their village. Inside, a representative of the elders named Nilgestori welcomed them to Ober Village. Mio thought they were elves, so the son of Nilgestori named Adono explains that they are the ancestors of the elves. While elves depend on wood, they're the ones who create it and rule it. So Adono questions his father about why they still live in hiding when the dragon barrier has already weakened. He also questions Mako for being a merchant, but he manages to defeat Eris and Aqua. After he left, the elders started asking Mako questions. Afterwards, Aqua informed him about the feast later as an apology to them, and that they also wanted him to meet their master. Suddenly, a man burst through the wall and the girls called him master. So he introduced himself as Mondo and offered his hand to Mako. He then felt something from him, but he was hit by Mio after holding Mako's hand longer than her. Outside, Mondo wondered who hit him and thought that Mako wasn't ordinary. Meanwhile, Mako asked Mio to gather information about Adono and Mondo. So she first spied on Mondo and noticed he was possessed by something. Her webs then sensed telepathy and heard Adono talking about his connections with the demons. Afterwards, she reported all of it to Mako. He then asked Mio to swap with Tomo on the Demiplane because he wants to confirm something. During the feast, he noticed Adono and Mondo talking with each other when Mondo suddenly strangled Adono and a flaming skeleton came out of him. Mako then asks why he killed them, and he explains that Mondo no longer has vitality while Adono is associated with demons. The skeleton then directed his attention to Mako to ask a question. Mako answered that the skeleton's craving for knowledge grants him an immortal body, which turns him into a leech. He then uses a spell that if Mako dodges, all the ogres will die, but he didn't dodge it because he has resistance to spells that inflict status effects. He then uses Mio's skill to consume Leech's power. After it, he asked Tomo to transfer Leech to the Demiplane. The elders then questioned Mako and revealed they planned to kill him after the feast. Tomo then noticed Nilgestori and revealed to him that she was the great dragon whom he begged to create their barrier. So Nilgestori asked the ogre to bow down, but she pointed out they should bow instead to Mako, whom she's serving. At the Demiplane, Mako questions Leech about seeking knowledge. He answered that because he aims to be a Grant, which is a high-ranking human. He then asked what spell Mako used on him, so Mako answered that it's dark magic and he only uses dark mana to make it work. Leech then asked how he got that amount of mana and mocked him, so the girls threatened him. Mako then asked to buy a magic textbook from him because his magic textbook is a single sheet of paper written by Emma. Tomo then suggested keeping Leech instead if he desired to learn magic. Since Leech's ambition to be a Grant is because he's aware of the existence of another world that the goddess doesn't own, and only Grants could freely travel between worlds. But she clarified that he's wrong because the ones who are called Grants are those who managed to travel to another world and never came back to their original world again, not because they became Grants. Mako then asked about the possibility of traveling to another world, but she answered that there's only a 10% success rate. Leech then found out his sacrifices were useless, so Tomo offered him a binding contract with Mako, which Mako accepted. At the illusory town, the adventurers continue staying after they find out that they will get rare goods, but they don't like charity and plan to steal from their treasury. Back at the Demiplane, they started the pact to contract, and Mako assured Leech that he needs someone like him. Leech then turned into a human form of a masculine guy, and the girls started planning to teach him when Tomo suddenly felt something and an explosion happened outside. While Tomo finally fainted, Mako then headed to the explosion's location with Leech, but Leech isn't used to his human body, so he informed Mako that he'd save up his mana instead to heal the injured. While Leech used his magic, Mako continued going to the location and saw others injured, including Hokuto, who he thought was already dead. But Leech informed him that Hokuto was just badly injured and asked for his help to heal him. Mako then uses Kai to heal him, but it has no effect, so he doubles it and Hokuto finally becomes stable. Suddenly, the little pig handed him the accessory of the orc he healed and pointed towards the location where Fragment and the orc tried stopping the humans. He then saw the explosion's location and the mist gate. He also sensed adventurers on the other side of the mist gate, including Fragment and the orc. So he remembered what Mio told him about how people can only diffuse their consciousness when they die. He then tried to ask the adventurer who entered the gate and saw the woman's memory, who used him, and also the group who tried stealing from them. That's why the others stopped them, but they accidentally threw the drop mirror. That's why Fragment tried shielding it, but it still exploded. Meanwhile, the woman survived and managed to come back to Sage, but a mist appeared and Mako showed himself without the mask. He pointed out that she got lucky that Fragment's wall and the clay aegis made her survive, but he wishes that she had died instead. He then showed her the traditional short sword of the orc that she killed. She then attacked him, but he immediately cut off her hands and finished her off. The next day, they held a memorial service for the orc and Fragment. A few days later, Mako announced to the girls that he named Leech as Shiki means knowledge because of his knowledge of magic. Mako then asked Tomo how he managed to see the adventurer's memory since it was her power, so he wondered if by forming a contract they had entered his body, but Shiki clarified that a servant could never enter a master's body, and Tomo thinks it might be just a coincidence that he managed to use it because of his emotions and their bond. Shiki also clarified that he can use his servant's power if he wants, but it will take time to get used to it. Afterwards, Mako suggested to Emma a specialized division that they'd encircle with a wall, so the adventurers believed that was the entire illusory city to prevent the weak and children from coming into contact with the adventurers, while the lizard men patrolled the area. He then asked Haruna about Hokuto's state, to which she answered that he recovered fast. He also asked that the Alp pretend to be adventurers, staying in the city and observe around. At the workshop, the dwarves had already proposed a waste storage warehouse to keep their dangerous things secured. On their way, he met the friend of the orc and apologized, but he explained that Mako is their savior, and they just did their job by also protecting the Demiplane. The next day, he met with Patrick, who informed him that the town that is unaffiliated with other kingdoms is called Rotsgard, a town with numerous educational institutions, so it would be easy to do his business there. Before leaving, Mako revealed to him that he had lied about the mask and took it off, but Patrick assured him that he still thinks of him the same way he did of his wife and daughters when they got the curse. Back at the Demiplane, the girls questioned why he chose Shiki to accompany him on his next mission instead of them. He explained that because Shiki used to be a human researcher and not a town destroyer, he also wants to check out the academy there himself to learn more about the humans of this world and their goddess, including his parents. That's why he also left them a parting gift according to their tastes. Tomo then informed him that she'd take the ogre as their new resident, while Neo volunteered to attend to his shop at Sage in the illusory city. After it, he bid farewell to everyone and finally arrived in Rotsgard. However, the goddess found him and he was transported to a different place. Suddenly, a woman attacked him and managed to cut off his fingers. The woman and the boy then talked about the goddess choosing a demi-human like him. So Mako finds out it's caused by the goddess. He then tries to communicate with Shiki and the girls, but no one hears him. He then asks their reason for attacking him, and she explains that he is their enemy since they sided with the demon. Mako then searches the area and realizes he was caught between humans and demons' war, and they thought he was the goddess disciple and planned to remove him. He immediately plans on going back to the demoplane, but they might follow him, so he buys time by facing them. He then shoots them with Brid while he tries to escape, but walls hinder him, so he puts barriers in his foot to destroy them. However, she caught up with him. The boy then speculated that he might be under the goddess's protection, so she removed the protection using a ring. Mako then clarified that the goddess wasn't protecting him, but they pointed out that he appeared wrapped in the goddess' golden light. They asked for his name then, and the boy introduced the woman as Sophia the Dragon Slayer, and he is Lancer. Mako then recognized Sophia's name from Zetsuya, who's the strongest adventurer. Mako then introduced himself as a merchant, but they didn't believe him, and started preparing for a fight, so Mako took off his ring to make them understand he's not affiliated with the goddess. He immediately releases his mana and destroys its surroundings. He also took out the Uchin made by the dwarves and used a flame bow to shoot, where his shot successfully hit them. He then uses water, and Lancer thinks he's at an advantage because it's his attribute, but Mako's water is stronger than his. Sophia then attacked him, but he managed to break her sword, so she hugged him and took him to the sky to drop him off. After it, she orders the demon army to advance, but continuous shots were coming from the sky. Mako then gathered his rings and fired the shot at them, freezing those around and turning them into water after. Sophia then informed Lancer that her armor was destroyed, while Lancer lost a leg. So they wonder if Mako is dead, and if not, she promises to kill him. Meanwhile, Mako was finally back on the demoplane. At the same time, Patrick was informed that the tragedy that happened at the Battle of Fort Stella was caused by the goddess's third disciple, a mage dressed in red. At the demoplane, Mako told the others what happened, that he was mistook by Sophia and Lancer as part of the human army. So Shiki speculated that the goddess probably tried to force him into fighting the demons. Mako then plans on studying magic at the academy because he became reckless with his mana. The girls then volunteer to come in case the goddess showed up, but he refuses, and he prefers Shiki to come because the goddess might already know him aside from the girls that he considers his trumpet cards and will call on in times of violence. Tomo then introduced him to another fragment who also shared the same senses as hers, but each of her fragments had different personalities. She'd also made her using one of Mako's used rings so she wouldn't end up like the last one. Mako then gave her a name, and since she's a small Tomo, she will be called Como. So Tomo proudly says she is their child and makes Como call Mako father. At the illusory city, Akina managed to do what Alka tasked to do with the adventurers coming to the city. At Sage, their shop has also been opened, and at first it was prejudiced because of the demi-human workers. But after finding out about their rare materials and services, people gather at their store, which made Patrick be amazed by Mako's work. Meanwhile, Mako learned that both humans and demons suffered from the battle he was sent to, and did not realize how much mana can be released when one's life is in danger. He also didn't realize the presence of two other people from his world who were known as heroes. While thinking about his parents and Nukumi, he was called by Emma for the feast and his farewell party. He then remembered that everything started because of Emma, that he was able to experience a fun life in another world. However, the two girls started fighting again.